Alienware have finally made the jump over to Ryzen processors for their new gaming laptop, and the budget-friendly Dell G5 also gets some nice updates. Let's dive straight into the latest news. The new Alienware M15 Ryzen Edition R5 will be available with Ryzen CPUs from the 20th of April in the US, and all other regions can expect availability 2 weeks after that from May 4th. Now, Alienware haven't yet provided me with the exact specs that the new M15 will be getting. They've just said it'll have an 8-core Ryzen processor and NVIDIA RTX 30 series graphics. So this probably means Ryzen 7 5800H or Ryzen 9 5900HX, as both are 8-core chips, though it wouldn't surprise me if they offered both. As for GPU options, well, based on the current Intel R4 model that we've already got today, I would assume that it would have RTX 3060, RTX 3070, or RTX 3080 options. Again, that's not confirmed, but it would be pretty strange if the newer R5 was lower than the older R4. Unfortunately, there's also no word on GPU power limits just yet, so you'll have to make sure that you're subscribed to the channel for when I get these machines into review. Another welcome improvement with the new R5 model is a move away from soldered memory over to SODIMM memory sticks. So there should be 2 slots that are user upgradable, meaning you can upgrade RAM yourself. The new 15-inch R5 will also have screen options up to 1440p 240Hz or 1080p 360Hz. Of course, with other lower end panel options too, depending on your budget, and some of those will have G-Sync. The M15 R4 has already been available for a little bit with Intel 10th gen CPUs, and that option isn't going anywhere just yet. However, there was no news on an Intel-based R5 model at this time. My best guess is it's probably a couple of months away until Intel's 11th gen Tiger Lake mobile processors are ready to go. We'll just have to wait and see. So this means that right now, Alienware have a new model coming that's Ryzen based rather than Intel. They also noted that this will be the first Alienware gaming laptop with AMD CPU since 2007, so 14 years ago. I think it's great to finally see them getting on board with Ryzen, as AMD has had some good success there over the last couple of years. And even if you hate AMD, I think it's still cool to have more options in the market. The R5 has an updated design compared to the R4. I think it looks fairly similar to the older models, with a similar design aesthetic with the glowing light ring on the back. Based on the renders provided, it looks like the left has the 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port and 3.5mm audio combo jack. The right hand side has a couple of USB Type-A ports, and both sides appear to have some sort of thin vents towards the back. Everything else is over on the back. From left to right, there's a USB Type-C port, USB Type-A port, HDMI 2.1 output, and the power input on the far right. The Type-C port appears to have a Thunderbolt icon in this render, but there was no mention of this, so I wouldn't assume it's the first Ryzen laptop to offer it. As was the case with the R4, the keyboard is now mechanical using Cherry MX ultra low profile keys, which can be seen on the far right of this image, with a regular desktop mechanical switch on the far left for size comparison. Alienware posted a teaser on Twitter giving us an idea of how typing sounds. So a little louder than a regular keyboard, as you'd expect. The keys have 1.8mm of travel, the keyboard has N-key rollover, and the M15 R5 doesn't have a numpad, so the keyboard is nicely centered. I don't personally use the numpad, so this is preferable to me, but that'll come down to personal preference. Like past Alienware designs, there's also air vents above the keyboard with that glowing power button on the right. The Ryzen-based M15 R5 will have a starting price of $2,230 US, so definitely not cheap, but that's kind of the norm for Alienware laptops, as they're positioned as a more premium laptop. I don't currently have any news on the 17-inch version, the M17, but I can't imagine why they wouldn't be offering that as well. Now let's move away from Alienware to the more budget-friendly Dell G5. The newer model will start at $800 US with global availability from the 13th of April. Last year, the Dell G5 SE was an all AMD design, so AMD 4000 processor and Radeon 5600M graphics. This year, at least initially, it's being upgraded to Ryzen 5000, but with NVIDIA graphics. And there'll be a cheaper GTX 1650 model or more expensive RTX 3060 model with a 115 watt power limit, so no Radeon graphics at this stage. However, when asked for more information around a G5 refresh with Radeon graphics, Dell simply said stay tuned. So to me, it seems pretty obvious that they're just waiting for RDNA 2 mobile. There hasn't been much news on that from AMD though. I think the last we heard was it would be available sometime in the first half of 2020, so I suppose up to 3 months to go. The CPU options in the new G5 will be the 6-core Ryzen 5 5600H and the 8-core Ryzen 7 5800H. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that that $800 starting price will be for the GTX 1650 graphics and 6-core Ryzen CPU combo. The new G5 will also have a 1080p screen with up to 165Hz, and there are 2 sizes of battery available. Dell is saying that the new G5 has an improved thermal design based on Alienware designs. So hopefully it's cooler than the last generation, as that could get quite hot. The new model certainly appears to have an upgrade. The renders show air vents on both the left and right hand sides, as well as vents above above the keyboard, none of which are present with the older G5. And speaking of Alienware, the new G5 design has a lot of similarities with that M15 model we just looked at, and I think this is a welcome change. The older G5 just looked cheap. I mean, it is a budget option, but it's just grey plastic and I don't know, it just doesn't look that good. I mean, obviously this is personal preference, but I'm not the only one to say that. I think the new designs are definitely a step up. The I/O layout, for instance, is similar to the Alienware M15. The left just has the gigabit Ethernet port and 3.5mm audio combo jack, while the right has a couple of USB Type-A ports. The rest is on the back. This is the only image of it provided, but from left to right there's a Type-C port, Type-A port, HDMI output, and the power input. There's also going to be an Intel 10th gen model of this same G5. Now the Intel model is also available with either GTX 1650 graphics or RTX 3060, but it will be using either a quad-core or 6-core CPU, so less cores with Intel compared to AMD, as is generally the case. Like I mentioned with the Alienware M15R5 though, I assume there will be an Intel 11th gen model of the G5 once those processors are available, though it does seem a little weird to make 10th gen models just for a couple of months. Speaking of 11th gen, given Intel's 11th gen desktop processors just launched, I was expecting to hear news about Alienware's desktop replacement, the 51M, but no updates were provided with all this news. Now, I have shown in other videos that 11th gen isn't that great compared to 10th gen anyway, at least with the top-end i9 options. So maybe they just decided it wasn't worth it, I'm not sure. It's also not clear if a BIOS update is needed in order for existing 51M customers to upgrade their own CPU to 11th gen. I would assume this would be the case, but yeah, I haven't heard news yet. And those are all the updates I've got from Dell at the moment. Make sure you're subscribed for when I get these gaming laptops into review, and join us over in Discord and get behind the scenes videos by supporting the channel on Patreon.